Hello, lovely human. Today's SMS, also known as 7-minute soundbite, is about emotions and the spectrum of emotions that we experience, but often don't have a name for. Let me tell you, when I was growing up in India, which was a very long time ago, I remember colours being very basic. Or my language of what colours existed was very basic. So, for example, the sky was blue, the grass was green, the earth was brown, someone's hair was black, and so on and so forth. If I think about how limited that particular way of thinking about colours was, I'm reminded how we actually think about our emotions. So, even if you think about the spectrum of emotions from a very basic linguistic point of view, you might say, well, I'm happy, or I'm sad, or I'm angry, or I'm, confused, or things like that. But actually, when you really think about the experience of emotions, it's so much more nuanced. So, for example, let's take anger, which is an emotion that we often sort of demonize, actually, because anger is seen to be a not a good emotion. It's seen to be a socially unacceptable emotion, and most of us are taught to not express it because it will make other people uncomfortable. It can be destructive. But anger is within it, or I should say, anger comes in a family of emotions, and there are lots of different cousins and siblings of anger. For example, irritation, annoyance, frustration, resentment, bitterness, even hatred. These are all forms of anger. And so when somebody says, oh, I never get angry, there's a possibility that they are not aware that actually they may not be angry, but they definitely harbor feelings of irritation or resentment or frustration, which may leak out as passive aggressiveness. So even though they're not manifesting that anger in the form of shouting or yelling or being abusive or violent, it is leaking out in other ways. So I think that awareness is extremely powerful. And why is it so important for us to become aware? Because awareness is only the first step in actually dealing with some of these emotions that ultimately become trapped in our bodies and demand to be heard. So, for instance, if you've had an experience, could be as a child or, even as a grown-up, that felt uncomfortable. I remember when I was at school, I was generally a good student. I was teacher's pet most of the time, but this one particular teacher, when I was about, let me think, how old was I? I was probably between 9 and 11. I can't remember the exact year that this teacher taught me maths. And I used to live in Delhi at the time with my family. And this particular maths teacher really didn't like me. Maybe she was like that with everyone else, but I only remember my own experience. And she would take great pleasure in humiliating me. She would write down a problem on the blackboard, and then she would get me to come up to the blackboard and solve the problem. She knew full well that I wouldn't be able to. She knew it. And yet she took great joy in my discomfort, in my shame and humiliation. As I stood there, I can still see my small form on that raised platform on the blackboard, feeling the eyes of all my classmates on my back, and feeling utterly powerless to say anything and not knowing how to answer that particular question. Now, that incident was repeated several times, and that, I can guarantee you, filled me with certain emotions that I was unable to express at the time. Fortunately for me, I was able to talk about it to my parents. I mentioned it to my mother, and my mother decided the way that she was going to help me was to not go and complain about the teacher, but actually make me sit down every day after school and do 20 sums, 20 problem solving maths questions, so that I got really good at maths, which I did. And I deprived the teacher of the pleasure of humiliating me. And so that was that problem solved. And in a slightly less obvious way, my mother helped me express that emotion and deal with it. And then I went on to have a really good maths teacher later on in life. And as you may know, I worked in finance and I actually love maths. So that was a happy ending, but not every emotion gets that kind of, acknowledgement, that way of allowing it to be expressed and to be released. So I'm here today to just say to you that the first step is to expand your language when it comes to emotions. Melancholy is different from sadness. Grief is different from sorrow. We've talked about, different kinds of anger, but there are so many different emotions that probably live inside you that you've never even considered. So my invitation to you is today, when you experience an event, just take a pause and notice what emotion rises up in you and whether you can give it a name. It's so lovely to have you join me today. I will be back again tomorrow with another SMS, and I wish you a wonderful day and a wonderful life. And if you've enjoyed this video, please show your appreciation through comments or reaction. And if you want to hear more from me, then do subscribe. Thanks very much. Bye for now.